As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Welcome you all, our professional colleagues, students and friends of ICAN, to another episode of ICAN on AIR, your great platform for learning, powered by our noble institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I'm your host for today, Tosin Akinwumi. Please inform your colleagues and friends that the show has started, and you can be part of this show, ICAN on AIR, on ICAN Facebook page, Instagram handle, or ICAN YouTube channel. And today, Thursday, the 26th of October, year 2023, we shall be considering another contemporary topic, assessment of the Nigerian economy under the new administration. And I have here with me in the studio a distinguished professional, a sought-after speaker, an amiable practitioner, a tax guru, the partner and West Africa tax leader, in person of Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA, who shall be providing insight on today's topic. So sit back and relax as I will go quickly on the commercial break and come back with my guest. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Yes, you are welcome back to another episode of ICAN on Air today. And today we are discussing the topic, assessment of the Nigerian economy under the new administration. And to dissect the topic is our own Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA, and he's already in the studio. Mr. Yomi is glad to have you today.
Tosin, it's my pleasure. Good evening and great to be here again.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure once again to have you on ICAN on Air, as we shall be looking at the topic, assessment of the Nigerian economy under the new administration. Quickly, let me take the brief profile of Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA. Yomi Olugbenro is a partner and the West Africa tax leader at Deloitte. He is a member of the Deloitte West Africa Executive Committee. Mr. Olugbenro holds a first degree in accounting and master's in business administration. He is an alumnus of the University of Manchester, UK, fellow of ICAN, fellow of CITN, and also fellow of CIS. He qualified as chartered accountant in 1997, and with over 20 years post-qualification experience, He has distinguished himself as a seasoned business advisor. He is the Dean on the Board of Indirect Tax Faculty of CITN and a member of the Board of Tax and Fiscal Policy Management Faculty of ICAN. He is a highly sought-after speaker and thought leader on fiscal and economic policy issues, and speaks regularly at local and international conferences. He is featured regularly in print and electronic media on fiscal policy issues and have many articles to his credit. His clientele include many Fortune 500 companies and other globally renowned local strategic companies. He consults regularly for multinational companies around the world about investment and fiscal terrain in West Africa and particularly Nigeria. Before assuming the West Africa tax laws role at Deloitte, he was at different times the firm's tax risk leader with responsibility covering West and Central Africa, Dean of Deloitte School of Tax, tax partner in charge of financial services industry, and member of Deloitte think tank. Dear professional colleagues and viewers at large, and that is their brief profile of our guest on the show today. And of course, you could see that that is a very rich profile coming from our own Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA. So, Mr. Yomi, we are looking at the topic for today, assessment of Nigerian economy under the new administration. And of course, if we look at it, I think it's almost getting to 6 months that we have the new administration. So on ICAN on Air today, we want to assess how far regarding the economic plan, economic thriving, has it been so far. So I'll be taking my questions for you. And of course, our viewers at home will also be sending in their questions for our guests on the show today. So let me kickstart this way. The positive growth and development of a nation requires effective administration and sound economic management. Having you as a guest on the show today will enable Nigerians and our global viewers to share from your depth of knowledge, skills, and experience in nation building. Sir, what is nation building, and what are some of the factors that are required for effective nation building?
Wow, I think that's a deep one, and thanks again, Tosin, and thanks to the Institute for inviting me. I mean, it's great that you're starting with the topic of nation building, and I mean, and then when we look at the concept of nation, actually, unlike the concept of country, which in essence is like a mere geographical expression, right? So when you hear the word nation, it connotes some sense of unity and common purpose, right, among its people. There's this sense of common identity and ideology and cohesion, right? That's what differentiates a nation from a country. So there's this shared prosperity and inclusive development that makes a nation a nation. So your question is, building a nation, what would be those critical pillars, or element that we will see? I'm not a development economist, right? So, but as a professional accountant and having, consulted with, multinationals around the world, I think for me, 5, 6, or maybe 7 issues will be top on my mind in terms of the critical pillar that you need to effectively build a nation, right? The first one on my list will be strong and visionary leadership. And that's very important. It's because it is the leadership that you need to be able to guide the nation building process. It is the role of the leader to set, clear goals and inspire the population and the citizens. So for me, a very strong and a very forward-thinking, future-facing leadership, it's important. The second is rule of law and strong institution. All right. It's good to have a charismatic leader, but it's far more important to have strong institutions. When process work, when system work, systems that are built to run, irrespective of who is holding that office. All right. And you also need a well-functioning legal system, because that's what provides citizens with the security and protection for their rights. All right. So the third on my list will be human capital development. That's when you focus on education, health, and well-being of the people, because a nation must care for its people. That's what brings and engender that sense of patriotism in the people. So human capital development will be a critical one, number 3 for me. Fourth on my list will be security of life and property. Right? People must feel safe, in their home, in their country, in their land. So ensuring that the citizens are safe and secure is very fundamental to nation building, because insecurity will undermine progress, won't allow you to have the type of investment and the type of peace of mind and focus that you need. Number 5 for me would be investment and a business-friendly environment. Right? That's what brings the economic growth. That's what brings development. For you to grow an inclusive economy and raise the living standard of people and reduce poverty, and contribute to their well-being, you must allow investment and business to thrive. Number 6 will be infrastructure. In this case, I mean in hard infrastructure, physical infrastructure, investment in education as well, and healthcare when you look at the soft side. But making sure that you focus on building hardcore critical infrastructure, railroad, power, and also making sure that human capital development it's there. The last for me will be maybe political stability and inclusive governance. So when the government is stable, when the political system is stable, long-term investment can come into your economy. People can look at the future with peace of mind. They can plan their business, they can plan their life, because they know that there's stability in your government, and the government is run in an inclusive manner. So if you have this element, I think you will have critical pillars that will help to build the nation that we desire.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Because hearing you clearly, the 7 pillars you have mentioned are actually things we will need for effective nation building, just like you have mentioned. But the next question, I will take it from your word now, because in listing the 7 pillars, in fact, the very first one, you talked about leadership. And I'll be taking my next question on leadership. So in the course of building a nation, the different leaders are known to have different leadership styles. What is leadership style all about, and how does it impact on the well-being of the citizenry?
No, that's very important. And if you notice, in terms of prioritization in the order of listing as well, so it was strong and visionary leadership that comes first. For me, when it comes to leadership, I think what you're looking for, it's someone who is able to articulate and provide a very clear vision of where the people should be going. That's essentially the role of a leader. And the second, that is probably closest to it, will be communicating that goal. So vision and the ability to communicate. So a leader is the one, irrespective of your style, irrespective of your personality, irrespective of your school of thought. At the end of the day, it boils down to your ability to effectively articulate a clear sense of direction. You can shape the future and imagine it and communicate it in such a way that you motivate the people and you galvanize the support of everyone towards that common goal. So if a leader is able to demonstrate those 2 clear, essential, responsibility, then he will be an impactful leader. He will be a leader that will impact on its citizen, right? Because first of all, the leader must know the destination and be strongly persuaded by himself, because that's what brings the conviction with which you sell and you articulate that vision. Okay, and so having been strongly persuaded by yourself, then the next is how to sell that vision in a persuasive and in a convincing manner to the people, so that the citizen can buy into that ideology. This is what our country should be doing. This is what I see this Nigeria be in 2030, in 2035, or in 2050, whatever is your time horizon is, and you articulate it convincingly to the people, and the people are able to trust you, because a leader must be trustworthy. You must be trusted as a leader. So the citizen must have the faith in their leader, and that's what brings the capacity and the credibility of the leader, or what we often say the 3 C's in leader. So if you see a leader who is competent, is capable, and is credible, and is able to sell a vision, all right, to its people, and get the buy-in of that people, then you will have gotten a good tick in having an effective leader in the saddle of things.
Thank you very much, sir. I think I can actually see the fact that the reason why you had to start your pillars with having a visionary leadership at the helms of affairs. Okay, sir. So let me now move to the mainstream of the topic for today. So, as a seasoned Nigerian professional and a leadership coach, do you think the current government inherited a comfortable economy, in your own view, on which to build on? If yes, how? And if no, why do you think so?
Well, I think you've given me another interesting title as a leadership coach. I won't call myself a leadership coach, but as a professional accountant, I think I can share, my own view on what the state of the economy is, and what I think the current government inherited, and whether what they inherited is comfortable. Whether they inherited a comfortable economy. Looking at just using your words. I think to every discerning person, we know that before the last administration passed the baton, right, we knew that the symptoms of some of the current challenges that we are facing now were already there. There's no doubt about that. We know that we've struggled with a limited fiscal headroom for quite a number of years because of shortage of revenue. Okay, we're not getting enough from oil, even when the prices were high, because we weren't selling as much as we could. Every year we budgeted an average of 1.8 million barrels per day, and we hover around 1 million, 1.1 million, 1.2 million, and sometimes even lower. So we've had that challenges, all right, and because of that, we've went into quite a lot of borrowing prior to that, including the ways and means financing by the CBA. And we all knew what that went up to in some of the months or some of the quarter during the last administration. There are instances where almost 80-90% of what was available to the government was spent on financing debt. All right, in terms of debt servicing, and all of that. We knew that we were borrowing to do the little that we could from a capital expenditure perspective, and there's just so much that we could get to do. So our investment in infrastructure was hindered by all of these challenges, because if you don't have enough revenue, okay, there's just so much that you can do in investment. So all those challenges were there, all right. And if you follow through the campaign process, right, you will know that at least all the 3 leading flag bearers, they made similar promises, around what they will do, because the issues, unless you want to, play politics about it, I think the issues were glaring for everyone. So they made similar promises around some of the things that needed to be done. Almost, I think all the 3 of them spoke to fuel subsidy removal, that it's no longer tenable. Most of them, also spoke about the issue of foreign exchange, and the fact that we need to reverse the practice of fixing exchange rate and allowing the forces of demand and supply to demand our exchange rates. So different kind of things. All of them, talk to the fact that we need to make more, generate more revenue. We need to invest a lot more in infrastructure. It's probably different, because all the candidates were different, is that each of them are likely to have approached it in their respective ways. But the things to be done are kind of the same, all right? So that was the reality of what we had, all right? So we can say that whatever problem we see today didn't start today. I think that's a fact. But it's the responsibility of the present administration to then fix the issue. Thankfully, today, I think we had closure to the issue of the election process, because the Supreme Court spoke today, and as far as the law of the land is concerned, that's where the 2023 election ends. Okay, now it is now the responsibility of the present administration to then, continue to face this issue heads on. We cannot use the excuse of I inherited problem as a basis for buck passing. The people have elected a new leader for the main purpose of fixing the problem, and it's my understanding that the present administration understands the enormity of that challenge, and the government will be held responsible and held accountable for whatever it does and whatever it doesn't do. So some of those measures are already been taken. Some of those, campaign promises, some of them have been implemented, and there are quite a lot more that needs to be done, particularly dealing with the impact of some of the decisions that have been taken, right? Because that's the way the economic works. So you try to fix a problem, and it creates, many other problems that you also need to solve, and you need to be as fast in responding as you were, in the decision that created the problem, if not faster. So that's how I will address it, Tosin, if that addresses your question.
Of course it does, it does. We cannot use the excuse of I inherited problem for continuous bug passing. I think I grabbed that from your response. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, let's take one more question, then we can quickly go on a short break. So under the new administration, the current government subsidy was finally removed on the price of PMS, and the Nigerian naira was also floated. What can you say about the current economic realities confronting Nigeria?
Wow. I think the issues are very glaring to the blind, and it can be loudly heard by even the deaf. There is no doubt that the country is going through one of the worst times in recent history. But maybe to start off, I would say is the short-term pain of much needed surgical operation that the country needs to have taken. And I think we must admit that it's not palatable. The pain is severe. Household going through, very excruciating pain. Businesses are struggling, right? Bottom line is thinning out. But as bad as those, experiences are, they are, necessary pain. Because if you look at the two key issues that are having spiral effect on the different aspects of the economy, they are necessary evil that we need to deal with head on. Fuel subsidy, last year I think was 4 trillion or a little more than that was estimated to have gone by way of fuel subsidy. That's 2 times or thereabout of the amount of capital spending that was done. This year, the estimate will have been maybe 6 trillion, or thereabout. So we don't have that kind of money to be able to do that. So it was a necessary evil. Looking at the exchange rate as well, and you look at, the arbitrage, okay, and all of the issues that were associated with the fact that government had a pegged rate and people were having, illicit access to it, and they were profiteering from that process. So those two issues needed to be dealt with, among many other things. Now, but what I think will determine whether the pain that the people are going through will be worthwhile are the decisions that, the other countermeasures and actions of government, okay, and what we are doing with the savings that we are making from those decisions that we have taken. Are we channeling and investing, those saved funds in the infrastructure that we have deficit of, or are we continuing with the tradition of high recurrent spending? Because those are possibilities, and that if you do those two things, but rather than channel the money to infrastructure spending, you continue to put quite a lot of it on recurrent spending, and and all of that, it will be short-term pain, medium-term pain, and long-term woes. All right, so that's why I said what will determine whether those pain will be worthwhile will be the decision that government is taking. So government needs to show, strong leadership by example, by demonstrating that, cost of governance can be reduced as a basis for justifying asking citizens to tighten their belts. All right. So if we continue to, ask the citizen, endure the pain, be patient with government, but there are not enough being seen on the side of government to demonstrate that we are in it together, then we wouldn't have been we wouldn't be doing the right thing. So and there's been a lot of conversation on what short-term palliatives as well that government needs to give. I know that both the states and the federal government have spoken and rolled out different short-term palliatives, 3 months, 6 months, different conditional cash transfers and payments and all of that. But in addition to that, or if you ask me, maybe rather than that, maybe some of those cash palliatives, which will only last 3 or 6 months, right, can be channeled to key services area, or key services that the those on the bottom end of the ladder, they consume a lot more. All right. Imagine extra fund channeled towards mass transportation. I know that mass transportation is part of it's all part of the scheme, but imagine that's mass transportation. Okay, we have more to that. Public school, more funding to that. Okay, public health, and some other social services. So these are areas where whatever you invest, can be enjoyed by the people over a much longer period than by the time the 3 months cash transfer is over, or 6 months cash transfer is over. This journey that we're on, it's not a 6 months journey. It's a long wait. And so being a lot more long-time minded in some of the palliatives will help to ensure that the pain in the short term is then augmented by long-term benefit that the citizen will then enjoy.
Wow. Anyone who is not here at the moment is actually missing, because, of course, we are assessing the Nigerian economy under the new administration. And our guest on the show, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA, is actually dissecting the topic. But quickly, let's go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Let's send in our questions. Our guest is on the show and is ready to take our questions. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Welcome back to another episode of ICAN on Air. And of course, we have in the studio today our guest on the show, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA. And the topic before us today is assessment of Nigerian economy under the new administration. Let me quickly look at some of our audience here today. Let me recognize them. Of course, we have Bala Issa, Fagbola Temitope Adeni, all the way from Ibadan, Adebukola Lambo, all the way from Ota, Sheun Jibowu connecting from Lagos, you are cited, Lolum Binde, all the way from Makurdi in Benue State, David Owoyemi from Abuja, Kayode Oguyinka connecting from Lagos, Ridwan Adedeji, all the way from Eruwa in Oyo State, Namdi Oyenka connecting from Austin, Philip Joel Sunday, Obashola Olawole Mohammed, Adebayo Kupoluyi, all the way from Lagos, Tijani Ademola from Itori, and other people who have been part of the show. Please send in your questions. Of course, our guest is on the show to answer your question. So let's continue from where we hang it before we go on the break, sir. So CBN recently lifted a ban on 43 products and now, of course, make them to assess FX in the high window, a measure undertaken to strengthen the Nigerian naira against foreign currencies. Sir, do you think that that measure can actually strengthen our naira and possibly reduce the growing exchange rate?
That's a very interesting question. Well, I would say that yes, but other things remaining equal, ceteris paribus. I mean, and this is what I mean. So maybe I should first explain the logic or the rationale surrounding the unbanning the 43 item as is so-called from FX. Prior to now, those 43 items were not banned from imports. The only ban it has, or the only restriction it has, was that government felt it will not fund the FX need by the importers of those items because it is perhaps believed those items should have local substitute, or they are not necessities or things that we could do import substitution for. Okay, but the items were not banned. In fact, if you've listened to recent conversations around the item, you will know that there are actually more than 43. So maybe 43 are the headlines. Okay, each one had some sub, and it could run into thousands of items if you actually expand the list. Now, but what drove the decision was that to say, look, because those items were not banned from imports, the importer were accessing their FX need for those items from the alternative sources, i.e., from the parallel market. And so it constituted a chunk of the demand for FX that was happening within the parallel market. And by so doing, it was pushing the exchange rate in the parallel market. So that was the logic. Now, having now unified the exchange rate, all right, or having taken the decision of saying, look, we will no longer peg FX and at a particular rate and have a different rate at the I and E window. It's now open for everyone at open buyer and open seller terms. If that is the case, why not allow the so-called 43 item also to compete freely like every other legitimate import? So that was the logic that drove the decision to say we will no longer ban it. So those 43 items can now access FS at the official window. Now, in principle, you will see that if what was forcing the demand in the parallel market, if part of it is removed or it's reduced significantly, then it lowers the demand in the parallel market, and the forces of demand and supply that is happening at the parallel market will ultimately make the price in the parallel market, the exchange rate, to strengthen. That's the argument. Now, the only reason why I put a proviso is that we still then need to deal with the supply side even in the official window, because whether the 43 item comes to the official market or not, part of what is, in fact, the major driver of the exchange rate volatility we're having is because of the acute shortage of supply. So unless and until something is done to shore up significantly the supply side of FX, we're not going to have the stability that we're looking for. It will still be a case of so much demand, but little supply, and the exchange rate will continue to rise. So yes, in principle, it should help to lower the pressure on the parallel market. However, we need to fix the demand side. We need to clear the backlog. We need to create the faith and the confidence in the market to remove all the speculative buying, and all of the panic buying that is going on, which is part of the reason that the exchange rate has been on this downward trend. So that's my response on that question.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much for that, sir. Before we take question on the audience, let me quickly take this question, that I will come quickly to the audience questions. According to the NBS 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Index, MPI.
Yep.
Or let me take it again. According to the NBS 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Index survey, about 63% of persons living within Nigeria were multidimensionally poor. Nigeria was and is still experiencing serious infrastructural deficit and decay. How can the current government address the causative issues and reverse the NBS 2022 MPI survey, especially in the long term?
Well, good question. Good question. Roughly 63%. And I think if my recollection is right, that's within the range of over 130 million people that are multidimensionally poor. Now, maybe to address the calculation and how government could fix it. So maybe it would be helpful to first understand how the MPI, the multidimensional index, poverty index, is derived or is calculated. There are 4 key elements, okay, of key pillar that makes up this measure. All right, and under each of the key element or the key dimensions, as we call it, you then have 3 or 4 indicators. So the 4 dimensions or the 4 key elements are education. So you look at access to education. What percentage of your population have access to quality education? You look at health, okay, what and there are measures, to do that. You look at the living standard of the people, and then the 4th is you look at work and security. So under education, you'll be looking at measures like school attendance, year of schooling, school lag, those kind of indicators. You will look at nutrition, food insecurity, time to healthcare under is a dimension like health, and the same thing you will do under living standard. How many percent of your population have access to safe drinking water, sanitation, house material, cooking fuel, those kind of things. Okay, you look at unemployment, you look at underemployment, you look at security shock. So these are the measures, that the indicators that are mapped together and appraised on a scale of 0 to 100. So 0 will mean there's no poverty, 100 will mean there's extreme, multidimensional poverty. So that's how it's measured. So to then address it, government then needs to focus on each of these key pillars. All right, education, health, living standard, work and security. So how do we invest and channel funds into education? You look at your annual appropriation process to say what percentage of funding do we currently have for education? What percentage of funding do we currently have going to healthcare? What percentage of fund do we channel to improving the living standard and the living condition of the people? All right, what are we doing, okay, to stimulate employment? What are we doing to ensure that we take a significant portion of our people, out of unemployment into the productive sector? You look at sector that have the bandwidth, like agriculture, and how do we get as many people as possible to go into the agricultural value chain? How do we empower SMEs? All right, how do we remove the impediments to doing businesses so that people can thrive and have access to daily living? So it is all wrapped around the investment decisions and in the investment effort of the government in those critical sectors that have indicators for measuring whether your people are living well or they are living under the poverty line. So it's the investment that government channel to those areas, and a lot will need to be done in human capital development. Right, a lot will need to be done in empowering, SMEs. A lot will need to be done in investing in education, in healthcare. A lot will need to be done in providing the enabling environment for private capital to thrive, for investors to come in and be able to employ a lot more people and be able to generate, the kind of employment that will turn things around for people. So it's all about investment. It's all about channeling resources to the area that will ensure that there's human capital development within the country.
Okay, sir. Okay, so quickly, let's take a few questions from our audience. Fagbola Temitope Adeniyi. He says, finding solutions to the nation's economic innuendo under the present administration seems as if we are using paracetamol to cure leprosy. What is the take of our guest on this?
I like the linguistic fluency of the questionnaire. So, well, I won't say we're using paracetamol to cure leprosy. I think some very bold surgical operation or surgical interventions have been made, if we must be honest. I guess the complaint or the reason why people are saying what they're saying at the moment is that after those surgical operations are done, so how do you then ensure that the desired outcome, people feel the desired outcome? Okay, but this is not going to be it's not going to happen in the short term. It's going to be difficult to happen in the short term, and that's why I spoke about some of the signaling effects that the actions that government is taking on the public service side, okay, can also help the people to show that, look, we are in this together. All right, if you allow your currency to float and you don't have enough supply to ensure that you meet all of the demand, it's a simple economics. The exchange, the currency will continue to fall. If you remove subsidy, if you are paying and pumping in money to ensure that fuel is sold at certain rate, and you remove the subsidy, fuel will be sold at a higher price. All right, and for every high cost of input into the production process, it will literally lead to high cost of the output. And so that's what is happening. Now, what then needs to happen is that in the short term, two things in the short term. One is the short-term palliative that the government is providing. I mean, you've had a conversation with the civil service, all right, and the civil servant, the public servant, on wage increase, wage award, and some bit of palliative. That's a measure, okay. There are conversations around cash transfers to household, for some couple of months. Those are short-term measures. I know that some of these actions are not as fast as they should, and I think that's part of the area that government needs to pay attention to. The time lag between when policies are announced and when they are felt that time needs to be bridged. We don't have that luxury of time, right? When the government came in, he spoke about student loan. Even at the large NESG, the CEC only just mentioned that he will ensure that by January 2024, that policy takes effect. We need to bridge the gap and ensure that things are done faster. The number of the other measures that, understandably, they would take some time for the implementation to kick in, like the mass transportation, converting buses to CNG vehicles, if you want to do mass housing, and all of that, it will take some time. The only area that I think I would strongly advocate that government show stronger leadership is around cutting the cost of governance. All right, we cannot continue to ask the citizen to tighten their belts without a complementary action from the side of government. We need to reduce the size of government, not increase the size of government. All right, we need to show that government is cutting down on its own expenses, not some headlines that we see that some government officials at different levels and at different tiers. This is not restricted to a particular tier of government or to a particular arm of government. The kind of narrative that we hear in the media are not the encouraging tone that the citizens will feel encouraged by. I think it's some of those areas that government need to focus a lot of attention on and ensure that we accelerate the investment we are making in all of those long-term investments so that the reward can begin to trickle down.
Okay, thank you very much for your response on that question. Let's quickly take another question from Oluwani Shola Omosonya. She asked, what are the best ways to curb inflation in this present economy? I understand we have limited exports and excess imports, but what are the measures that can be taken to bridge the gap?
Well, I think when it comes to inflation, I think one of the most important action that the monetary authority typically do and will do is to first of all understand the driver for the inflationary pressure that you're facing. Is it a demand pull? Is it cost push? Some of the analysis we've had, from economists, particularly on the state of play in the country, is that a lot of the factor driving inflation is still around, the productivity level within the economy, right, and the shortage of it. So when you don't have enough productivity in an economy, so you are not producing enough because of all of the factors that we've spoken about, no access to FX, high cost of input, and all of that. So it affects the output from the manufacturing sector and from the service provider, and therefore prices will continue to rise because of the limited supply. So what we need to do is to be able to address those issues heads on. Until it is done, you will not be able to have respite in the inflationary trend. Since 2016 up until now, I think inflation has been on an upward trend. It's currently like at a 27%. Or thereabout. So a lot needs to be done in ensuring that there are interventions. So what can government do with respect to access to finance, to ensure that the cost of input by businesses, are lowered? Okay, what can government do with respect to, say, the exchange rate issue that we were talking about? For example, how do we ensure that we quickly restore confidence, all right, exactly, in the exchange rate system, so that all of the panic buying, can stop, so that we can have some bit of stability, because these are what contribute into the inputs that the manufacturing sector and service providers are having, that ultimately is leading to the unabated cost of goods and services.
Exactly. Thank you very much, sir, for your response. We would have loved to take more questions, but of course, for the want of time, we'll need to quickly go to the final questions for our guest on the show today. In closing, assuming Mr. President and his economic team invite our own Mr. Yomi Olugberu, FCA, to give an assessment of the Nigerian economy from when he assumed office, May 29th this year, till this day, what will your assessment template be to Mr. President?
Wow. Okay. I would say well done on some of the bold decisions that government have taken. It takes some courage to take some of those decisions. So I will applaud those decisions. But I will also reiterate what I believe the president also know very well, because at different times I've heard him directly or officials of government also acknowledge the fact that the impact that the decisions taken so far is having on the economy is huge, and that immediate action needs to be taken, to alleviate the burden, of the suffering masses. I would say to the government, I say, look, we need to prioritize the action that is being taken in dealing with the supply shortage of FX, for example, because of the broader effect it's having on the economy, right? Government needs to focus on clearing the backlog, okay, and restoring confidence, okay, in the currency. There's so much speculation, okay, there's so much panic within the system that even those who do not necessarily have immediate needs, who ordinarily would not have had immediate need for FX, are only looking for to the currency as the only store of value. I mean, one of the functions of the currency, okay, in any country, that is a store of value. So when the citizens no longer see their currency offering that function, then they look for salvation in alternative currencies, and that's part of the drive that is fueling the fall of naira. And of course, Mr. President already acknowledged this. During the last NESG meeting, he spoke quite well about this. He spoke to the fact that the government has line of sight on the level of inflow that is needed. He spoke to the fact that the government, hears the suffering masses, understands the pain. I think what needs to be done now is the urgency of action. It's good enough to provide assurances, that the government understand. What's more important is what is the government doing and what will the government do? Okay, how do we shorten the time lag between promise time and action time? Okay, how do we ensure that what government is doing on its side complement what it's asking the people to do? I think it's those kind of signaling, and that's what leadership is all about, which was exactly where we started from. So this is what we engender trust, this is what we engender confidence, and this is what we make the people to believe the hope that the government is selling. People need to survive and exist today to be able to live in the hope that is promised for another 5 or 10 years. So that would be my little take on that as the time will permit.
Wow, that's a very beautiful submission on the show today. Mr. Yomi Olugbenru, FCA, we want to say a very big thank you to you for being part of us today and dissecting this topic. Mr. Yomi Olugbenru, FCA partner and the West Africa tax leader at Deloitte. We say thank you for coming on the show today and for sharing your wealth of experience with our members and friends of the Institute. We say thank you so much for coming. And when next we call upon you, we'll hearken to the call of the Institute. Thank you very much. Our time is fast spent. Let's quickly take a few announcements here. Then we can quickly close the show. Professional examinations comes up between November 14th to 16th, 2023. And registration closes by Friday, November 10, while payment closes by 3rd November. All students should please take note of this and get registered for the forthcoming November diet. Also, 72nd induction ceremony comes up between December 4th to 5th. Of course, the induction fee is 121,000 naira and registration closes by Friday, November 17. Let's quickly take note of this and register on time. Of course, the 22nd fellowship conferment ceremony comes up on Saturday, December 16, 2023. Of course, the Institute has taken a decision to go on a fellowship conferment of twice in a year. Of course, let's just quickly register. The venue will be Landmark Event Center, Victoria Island, Lagos. All members of the Institute are enjoined to quickly subscribe on all our social media handles. Let's go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channels. Let's go and click and follow us on our Facebook, on social media, and all other social media handles. Of course, for the want of time, because our time is fast spent, we want to say thank you very much. And you would agree with me that today's program is worth the while, highly educating, and of course, instructive. And that's all for the show today. We want to say thank you for being part of this show. Till I come your way again with another guest and another topical issue, please stay safe and sound. And I say thanks for watching and have a lovely evening.